Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Monday evening, February 25th, 2019. Welcome Smaulgld Mug stackers and game changers. Tonight's topic, hints of a silver shortage. We're going to get to that later in the show. First, we're going to take a look at the gold and silver prices, the crypto prices, a bunch of gold and silver and crypto stories, some news stories. And then we're going to get into whether there is a silver shortage. So first, let's take a look at some of the prices that we see for gold and silver. So first of all, the markets were up today. The equity markets were up. They had been up a lot more earlier in the day, but the Dow Jones did manage a 0.25 percentage point gain. Trailed off towards the end of the day. NASDAQ up 0.36% and the S&P barely into positive territory, but the Dow Jones did keep above 26,091, up 60 points. NASDAQ was up 27 points at 75.54, and the S&P 500 up 3.5 points to 27.96. Dollar index was flat. Now, there was big movement in the precious metals, but not in gold and silver. The big move in precious metals was in platinum and palladium. Both were up significantly. Platinum up about $10 to $8.52. Palladium all the way up to $15.21. It is now nearly twice the price of platinum and is outpacing gold. The normal scene, well, the last few years, 20, 30, 50 years, the normal scene is that platinum is more expensive than gold, and gold is far more expensive than palladium, and then silver follows. Palladium right now, palladium is at the top of the heap. Now let's take a look at the gold price, though, today. Gold price was flat. Gold price was down about 80 cents. It's about where it is right now at the close. It's at $13.26 in the aftermarkets. Still holding above that $1,300 mark. Silver, not so good. Silver also down just a little bit today, but down a little bit more than gold was, but down 3 cents, not a big deal. Down to $15.88 in the aftermarket. Excuse me, it was down to $15.85. As I mentioned, platinum, palladium, the big gainers today. And the gold-silver ratio, well, it's still above 80 to 1. And there it is, 83.68 to 1. Not going to cover that today, but you know we do often cover the gold-silver ratio, so please stop in. We do this each and every night around this time, 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 7 days a week. By the way, Saturday night with silver last Saturday, just 2 days ago, was with Salivate Metal. We had a good time talking to Salivate Metal. This weekend on Saturday night, we will do Saturday Night Silver with SD Bullion and James Henry Anderson. I'm going to go through some of the top-selling bullion products, so that should be a good time on Saturday night. Mark your calendar. Probably we're going to start at 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening in the gold and silver markets. So Barrick's looks like they are going to pursue. Newmont Mining had announced that it was merging with the number 4 company, Goldcorp, and now it looks like Barrick wants both of them. And that would make Barrick's the top of the heap again. It would own the top 4 gold mining companies, and it would clearly be the leader. Question whether that'll have an antitrust issue. I'm not sure that will come about, but it would make Barrick the big kahuna. And here you go. Barrick launches $18 billion hostile offer to buy rival Newmont Mining. So there is consolidation certainly taking place in the gold market there. There was a tragedy in the silver arena in China. Over 20 people died when a mining bus crashed. It looks like it was not properly, looks like a mistake, was faulty, overloaded and using a ramp not intended for transport. It looked like the ramp collapsed and the people perished as a result. So very sad news there. Just a reminder that mining is a dangerous business. Gold mining, silver mining, nearly all mining, coal mining is a very dangerous business. Over to Russia. Now, we report each and every month on the Russian gold reserves, and we notice that Russia is by far the largest buyer or largest central bank buyer of gold reserves. And we note that they buy from their domestic supply. They're the third largest gold mining country in the world. And last year, we reported they purchased 86% of their domestic gold mining production and put it into their gold reserves. You can go back and check out those BitChutes and YouTubes we've done on that. Also on the Smaulgld website, you can check out all the charts on Russian gold acquisition, gold reserves. But there was another story that Russian reserves fully cover international debt for the first time in history. Now, that's a big deal. That is a very prudent central bank, because not only do they have 20% of their reserves in gold, but actually their external debt can be covered by their approximately $500 billion worth of foreign reserves. Not that they're going to pay it all off, but the point being is they do not have, like most other central banks, the massive amount of debt. We know the U.S. Treasury has massive debt. We know China has, I think, issued 60% of the world's debt in the last 10 years. Most of the world is awash in debt from the central banks of Japan, England, ECB, and People's Bank of China, United States. Most central banks use monetary policy and debt in order to boost their GDP and to pay for their domestic spending programs, and in the case of the United States, also to pay for foreign aid and military spending. All right, let's move on now to the crypto scene. Now, crypto's had a wild ride the last couple of days. They had been rising quite substantially for the last 3 weeks. And I think Litecoin had gotten well over $50. Bitcoin gotten over $4,100. And then 2 days ago on Sunday, they had a flash crash. Each of them fell, about 10-15% each. They've since rebounded somewhat, but it does show the volatile nature of these crypto assets. So right now we're looking at the prices of Bitcoin, Litecoin, and so on, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin back up to $3,819. That's up in the last 24 hours, about 2%. Ethereum is at $137. That's up about 3.51%. It had gotten over $160. Litecoin, as I mentioned, had gotten to about $52, is now at $45.42. That's up about 4% in the last 24 hours. And Bcash at $133. That's up about 4.5% as well. Let's get into some of the crypto stories of the last couple of days, other than price. Remember, price to me, it's not necessarily, it's not my opinion, but the price is not, to me, the most important aspect of what's going on in the space. The price is often detached from what's going on, so I like to report on what's going on. Obviously, we have to pay attention to price, but that doesn't give you the full picture of what's going on. So let's check out a couple of news stories here. Japanese banking and cryptos. Now, Japan has very much brought on board the concept of cryptocurrencies. You can use them there. They have a regulatory structure set up. And one of their banking giants is going to launch one of these stable coins. Now, the purpose of a stable coin, and it'll be based on the yen, they're somewhat proliferating. Tether is the most famous. But the intention of a stable coin is when you trade crypto assets, rather than cashing out into a fiat currency, you cash out into a stable coin. This way it stays in the crypto trading system and it's easier to move in and out of that coin. Now, what's the significance is Japanese banking giant Mizuho also has a coin wallet and a trading platform, and it looks like they're going to facilitate that trading amongst their banking customers with their through their coin wallet. So it's a pretty big development. Doesn't increase the price or anything, but clearly shows that at least this Japanese bank is fully aware of the demand, and that's why they're creating their own stable coin in order to facilitate trading on the crypto platform that they have over there. Now, Liechtenstein, which is not a big place, it's not a lot of people, but it is in the European Union, and they have a bank there that is launching an institutional crypto trading platform. We are seeing now these institutional trading platforms being developed, being launched. We know Fidelity is coming out with one in March. TD Ameritrade and RSX are supposed to be following shortly thereafter. We also saw Liechtenstein in the post offices. I believe now you can buy Bitcoin as you can at tobacco shops in France. So you're seeing the general adoption of these cryptos. And here's an interesting one on the storage. A group of 30 global central securities depositories. So that's where all of the stock certificates and information is held about stock trading information. They're looking into exploring crypto custody. And that is one of the issues that the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission of the United States, has had an issue with before they can approve a Bitcoin ETF, is they want to make sure that the storage solutions are robust and that they're properly secured and insured against theft. And that's something that I believe that many entities in the United States, including Fidelity, have been working on, and as well as VanEck, which is one of the Bitcoin ETF companies that have sent in a request for a rules change in order to allow their ETF to be approved by the SEC. And the New York Stock Exchange, ARCA, also has a Bitcoin ETF pending. I think there's been at least a dozen Bitcoin ETFs that are pending. And the main issue the SEC has had, one is the making sure that there is some sort of proper storage. I think they're sorting that out. I'm not sure that that's an issue anymore. And the other is whether there is not a lack of manipulation, but whether the SEC can have market surveillance agreements so they can determine whether there's manipulation going on. And I believe NASDAQ is working on that with VanEck. So these are issues that will probably get solved. And we saw the other day that South Korea said that looks like they're going to wait for what the U.S. does on ETFs before they go ahead and approve ETFs as well. Now, the Lightning Network. What is the Lightning Network? A lot of work going on in the Lightning Network, and it looks like this is something that is gaining not just number of nodes and number of channels that are opening up to make the Lightning Network operable. The reason that Lightning is necessary, and some people, there's a debate over this, we're not going to get into that right now, but one of the issues with Bitcoin is the supposed lack of scalability because of the block sizes in order to confirm transactions, and that's what the whole Bcash concept was. They would just make bigger blocks, and that would facilitate the payments becoming faster. Now, ultimately, that's not really scalable because then you just have to make bigger and bigger blocks, and eventually what happens is only the largest miners can deal with that, and you get security issues. But what Lightning Networks proposes to do is to conduct the transactions off the chain, off the block, and then record them afterwards so that you don't have to wait for your transaction to clear. Now, that is a second layer onto Bitcoin. Some Bitcoin purists say that Satoshi never intended this. It doesn't really matter. It's what's happening in the Bitcoin space right now is the Lightning Networks, and it looks like it does have the tacit approval of many of the big players. So, for example, Fidelity, which is due to launch its cryptocurrency institutional trading platform in March, received this the Lightning Network torch, which is there are a number of high-profile Bitcoin advocates who are sending a small amount of Bitcoin through the Lightning Network to each other, and then they pass it along. It's somewhat like a Olympic torch, and Fidelity Digital Assets was one of the recipients of that torch, and they've passed it on. And as you can see, you can track all this, and they've been doing this now for the last month or so. It's gone from Fidelity, it's gone to some prominent Bitcoin people, then it went to a Harvard Business School blockchain and crypto club, and then they took that, and these are all very high profile transfers. Then they sent it to who should we pass it on to next? They sent it to two people. I'm not sure who they are, but I'll show you. Let's see who they were. Yeah, VJ Boyapati and Matt Walsh. But in any event, it just keeps moving on and on. It's meant to show that this Lightning Network is something that is real. And here you have in Cointelegraph, derivative giants, Fidelity Investment receives and passes on the Lightning torch. But let's look at the growth in the Lightning Network in Bitcoin, also as well in Litecoin. Now, the reason the Lightning Network has not expanded at this, obviously, the same pace of Bitcoin is currently Litecoin, because it only has 1/10 of the transactions of Bitcoin, is not held up, is not slow at all. If you want to send Litecoin, it's very easy to do. It goes very quickly. There's no congestion at all. Now, eventually, the thought is that if Litecoin becomes big enough, then it too will have that issue, but it doesn't have it right now, given that it only does about 1,000 transactions an hour and an hour, and Bitcoin does about 13,000. But the Lightning Network is meant to alleviate that load, that transaction load, and so that's why there are more Bitcoin Lightning Network nodes right now than Litecoin. Bitcoin now up to 6,699. Litecoin only has 153. Bitcoin has 30,000 channels. Litecoin 922. And the capacities, you can send 724 Bitcoin. That's a couple of million plus dollars, and Litecoin only 121. But these are growing by leaps and bounds. I think the last time we looked at this, just back at the beginning of February, it was 5,700 Bitcoin nodes. So you can see it is something that is catching on, people running their own nodes. You also make money when you run a node. You get a bit of a transaction fee. There's probably some issues around that with money transmitter and so on, but not going to get into that at the moment. All right, let's see what else do we have here. Using Bitcoin. Now, here's these come up all the time, but the largest world's tallest building, which is in Dubai, now accepts Bitcoin and Ethereum if you want to rent an apartment there or buy an apartment there. So that was a pretty interesting story. I don't know how many people will do that, but it is available. Another interesting story, we hear about Venezuela all the time and how the Venezuelan bolivar, I think the inflation rate per day is like 3.5%. It's in the thousands of percent annually. If you have any bolivar, it is the crack up boom scenario, as Mises talks about, where you just have to get rid of. If you have any currency at all in local currency, you have to spend it or it's going to evaporate. And this particular economist, his name was Carlos Hernandez in Venezuela, he mentions how he uses and he converts small amounts of Bitcoin each day into Venezuelan bolivar, and he's able to spend it in his country. He mentioned, I think his brother or his family member managed to escape Venezuela using Bitcoin. So another use case there for Bitcoin. All right. What else do we have today? Now, in the markets, the Fed. Oh, Fed's always in the news here. And, the Fed has really done an about-face recently with their end of last year talking about how many rate hikes they were going to do in 2019. And now it seems like they're not going to do any rate hikes in 2019. It's all this wait-and-see stuff. Now they're even hinting at maybe having to do a rate cut. And now they're also talking about what different tools they may need to use in case the economy slows down. We're looking at the fourth quarter GDP according to the Atlanta Fed. The GDP now, I think it's the most recent reading, is 1.4%. Remember, a recession is 2 quarters in a row of negative GDP. Oftentimes the Fed is raising interest rates into a recession, something they shouldn't do. But there's a lag effect, and generally they get it wrong. So it's possible if the fourth quarter actually comes in flat or negative, they were raising interest rates during that, and that would mean probably the follow-through in the first quarter would also be negative. We had the government shutdown, and if you have a low GDP in the fourth quarter and then you had the government shutdown in the first quarter, it's possible, I'm not predicting it, but the numbers may come in that would be a recession, the fourth quarter negative and the first quarter negative, and that would mean that the Fed screwed up, at least if their view is to avoid recessions by monetary policy, i.e. raising rates, lowering rates, buying bonds, or whatever. But here you go. The Fed, this guy, Fed's Clarita, says central bank may adopt makeup strategy. And he's talking about how they can allow inflation to run above targets if prices have grown. And essentially saying they may consider buying bonds again. Well, that sounds like QE. But we'll see what happens. It looks like, I think if the economy starts to falter a bit in their view, and they don't have the inflation that they want, and it's funny, they want 2% or more inflation, they may resort to buying bonds. Now, Donald Trump today. Remember, we've talked here about the Trump pump and the Powell put, and that's basically what we saw at the end of December. Look, the stock market was starting to fall. Trump came out and started talking about stocks being undervalued, started putting pressure on the Fed, saying you guys are raising rates, you shouldn't be raising rates. Take a look at the market, look at the market, look at the market. The market's going down. And then all of a sudden, it looked like the Fed decided, yeah, we're going to stop and wait and take a look at what's going to happen before we start continue to raise interest rates. And then Trump was saying, stock market's great, stock market's great. He's also weighed in from time to time on the price of oil. He seems to take it personally whenever OPEC raises oil prices. And he was out there this morning saying oil prices are getting too high. OPEC, please relax and take it easy. World cannot take a price hike. Fragile. And today, I think the oil prices, and I'm not going to say this is attributable to Donald Trump, but the oil prices did go down today. Crude at 55.46. Yep, they were at 57.50, and then he yacked, and it looks like they did go down a couple of dollars a barrel. Not sure there's a correlation there, but that is what happened. Now, Janet Yellen, our friend, highly accommodative monetary policy. Yes, there she is. And you would think she would have faded away, but she's back at it. And, he says Trump doesn't understand economic policy. And here's a quote for what she said. She was on America's Public Media Marketplace and was asked if Trump had a grasp of macroeconomic policy. She said, no. I doubt that he would even be able to say what the Fed's goals are: maximum employment and price stability. So she basically says that Trump doesn't even understand that the Fed has this so-called dual mandate of maximum employment and price stability. And then she went on to say, I think comments like that show a lack of understanding of the impact of the Fed on the economy and appropriate policy goals. Yep. So Janet Yellen, not a fan, and I think Donald Trump isn't a fan of her, and I think the reason he rejected her for another term as Fed president because he was too short. High finance here. All right, well, I guess you know, and I know what it's time for. Uh-oh, we got a moron here.
Presenting the distinguished international news commentator and foreign correspondent,
Smaulgld. This has been an extraordinary week in world affairs.
No, I told Hillary Clinton that that's moronic.
So people are like, oh, it's unrealistic. Oh, it's vague. Oh, it doesn't address this little minute thing. And I'm like, you try. You do it.
Right.
Because you're not. Because you're not. So until you do it, I'm the boss.
I'm the boss, I'm the boss, I'm the boss. There you go. Well, that is tonight's Veronica. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She says she the boss. That's right. She's the boss because she's presented a plan. Doesn't matter how good it is. Doesn't matter whether it makes a stitch of sense. She's put it out there and no one else has. And therefore, she is the self-proclaimed boss. Yep, there she is. She's telling you she's the boss. And you better believe it. Now, this is causing problems now because while many can admire the moxie or the chutzpah or whatever you want to call it, there's many on the Democratic side that are not really digging this because enthusiasm itself doesn't necessarily win the day. You usually generally have to have some substance. And she's essentially laying out her territory, which in a sense is moronic, that you have to listen to me because I'm the only one who even put anything out there. It's almost like a participation trophy. She said something, she put a plan out there, and if you don't have a plan, then I'm the boss. There's not much logic in that. Now, what's interesting is what else happened during the week was another anyone might remember Alexander Haig, Alexandria Ocasio-Haig. And this is a history lesson here. When Ronald Reagan was, the attempted assassination on Ronald Reagan in 1981, I believe, he had been taken to the hospital, and Alexander Haig, I believe, was the Secretary of State. He declared himself in charge there. That's why I call him Alexandria Ocasio-Haig. Okay, now, we then have Dianne Feinstein. Very interesting story here. And she was speaking to some children at a school, and the teacher had prepared them very well that they wanted Miss Feinstein to approve the Green Deal. And they had these 7 or 8-year-old children insisting that the world was going to end in 12 years, and that if Dianne Feinstein didn't step up and approve this plan, everyone was going to die. And the teacher was also chiming in and saying, this has to happen. Now, Dianne Feinstein, according to Twitter Moments, says that a video posted by climate change activists showed Dianne Feinstein appear to lecture a group of children asking for her support. Now, when you look at the initial video, it doesn't look like she's appearing to lecture. It looks like she's berating them, browbeating them, telling them off, shutting them off, ridiculing them. And she says to one 16-year-old who happened to be there, she must have been, I don't know what she was there for. She wasn't a student at the lower end. Maybe she was working as an intern. Anyway, she was there, and she was saying, you have to do this, and we voted for you to do this. And Miss Feinstein says, well, how old are you? She says, I'm 16. She says, well, you didn't vote for me. And then the other clips that they show was Dianne Feinstein saying, look, I just won a big election. I know what I'm doing. This deal is not that good. You guys can't come to me and tell me it's your way or my way or the highway. I've got my own plan. Okay, selectively edited, but she did tell the kids that she wasn't in favor of this Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez Green New Deal. So clearly you have the old leadership of the Democratic Party are not really digging Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's plan, and she told the kids, look, this kind of plan isn't gonna make it. People are not gonna vote for it. And they were insisting that it was the only way, because obviously they've been told they're gonna die in 12 years, so that this is the only way it can go. And it's interesting that the teacher was promoting that narrative to the kids. But then it turns out, and it was selectively edited, but she did tell the kids, that I'm not for this plan. But it turned out that it was, I guess there was nothing in the video that was, they didn't change the language. She did tell the kids, look, I know what I'm doing, and essentially you don't. But the way they clipped it together really made her look more nasty than she really was. She was actually somewhat gracious to the kids and trying to explain to them, and she handed out portions of what she thought was a good Green Deal plan. She didn't go into the contents of it, but she was saying this is what we think can pass, and so we're not necessarily in favor of Cortez's Green New Deal here. So it turns out that there was a bit of selective editing, and again, that's what, when you watch the news, you just have to be careful. And generally, the way these things work out, if you're inclined to be against Feinstein and you see that video, then you're like, she's a monster. Now, we saw it with the Covington kids. If you want to believe that someone in a red hat that says "Make America Great Again" is racist, then whatever you see, if it matches that, that's what you're going to think, and then you don't see the whole story. And we're seeing lots of that thing. We're never going to talk about the Jussie Smollett case, but these are things that the mainstream media and the alternative media, they like to create these, what I call thunderbolt type events. And then what they try to do is they make them out to be like there's some type of national issue, when it's essentially maybe in many instances just a dispute between 3 to 5 people. They try to make it seem like this is what's going on all along the country. Speaking of what's going on all along the border here is Nancy Pelosi. This is a very odd thing here. I don't know what, I'm not quite sure what was going on here, but there she is. She's marching with her flag, and she's going to meet a Mexican individual on the other side there, near the border in Laredo, Texas. And it's meant to be some type of hug ceremony. I'm not sure what the point was, but it was very interesting. All right, now let's move into the silver shortage. But first, let's take a look at some mug shots. Yeah, let's take some. We haven't looked at the mugs in a while. These guys are still pending bail. There is the Smaulgld Mugstein. There it is, the beer stein, 22 ounces. That is available. Go to smaulgld.com. You can get a Mugstein. There is the Smaulgld travel mug shot. And what else do we got in mug shots here? Well, we've got the Smaulgld mug shot glass. There you go, the Smaulgld mug shot glass. That's also available. You can either go directly to the Smaulgld store. The best thing to do is go to smaulgld.com. You can find all your buying opportunities there. Remember the Smaulgld Classic, which is this one, and the Super Classic mug, which is this one. They're available directly from Smaulgld, and I ship these out directly from Smaulgld headquarters. All of the other mugs that you've seen, the beer steins, the travel mugs, the shot glasses, are available at the Smaulgld store, and they ship those to you. You can also get espresso mugs there, and you can even get pet bowls. Some Smaulgld mug stackers have bought these pet bowls for their dogs. We've seen pictures of those. We're not going to show them tonight, but maybe tomorrow night we'll show that. Always lead the mug life. There it is. All right. Let's now look at this silver shortage, because you know me, I am skeptical of all these game over and game changer stories. And the silver pumpers, they cannot leave it alone. They've got to have this silver shortage. Silver is so useful, and it is going to skyrocket, because the best is when this happens. When the U.S. Mint tells you they don't have any more Silver Eagles to sell you. Well, now it's silver set to skyrocket. Silver's so useful. COMEX is going to default. It's game over, game changer. Now, this is all complete nonsense. And I've tried to, what I generally do is, like everyone does, you have initial reaction. So if you are of the mindset and you've been conditioned to think that everything that you hear about silver means it's going to the moon, and the only reason your mind is conditioned that way is because you've listened to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years of silver pumper channels, and they all basically say the same thing. And once you believe that narrative, you're preconditioned to believe anything. Anything that's going to tell you that silver is going to go skyrocketing, and nothing is better than a silver shortage, except maybe a COMEX default or a gold-backed yuan. There's all these stories that are, or JP Morgan is buying silver, all these nonsense stories that somehow you believe because you've been conditioned to believe them. Silver is money, period. And once you believe that, you'll believe anything. And in fact, you'll resist hearing anything that contradicts that narrative. That's just typical the way the mind works. Once you buy into a narrative, your mind shuts off, and you just look for things that tell you, and that will, people who will repeat to you what's going on, the same narratives that you want to hear. Well, silver shortage is right up there, and why wouldn't there be a silver shortage? Why? Well, U.S. Mint doesn't have any Silver Eagles. Must mean a silver shortage. Must be because J.P. Morgan is stacking the shiny. Everyone's stacking now. You'll see, and then the COMEX is going to default. And okay, there is no silver shortage. I tried to do as much research as I could to maybe even say, well, there might be. No, there's not. This has happened before, and the reason is simple. The United States Mint did a very stupid thing a long time ago with respect to the Silver Eagle program, and the Canadian Mint's in the same boat. They have outsourced the production of silver blanks or planchets. What does that mean? It means they're mints, but they don't make their own silver coins. They buy on contract from third-party suppliers blanks. I should have a picture of it, but I don't. But you can imagine a silver round with nothing on the front and nothing on the back. Now, who makes these? Third-party suppliers, and they ship them to the Canadian Mint and the U.S. Mint. Now, to me, that is moronic. They think it's more effective. Well, it's not. If you're a mint, you should be able to make blanks. And you should then be able to stamp your blanks with your coin on them. You shouldn't have to rely on a third-party private company. But that's what they do. And this has happened before. It happened in 2015, happened in 2011. It happens once in a while. And the reason for it is the mints don't like to keep a lot of blanks on hand. They think they're being, if you think about the waste in government, but somehow they think they're going to efficiently manage the number of blanks that they have. They're never going to store a lot of them because if they run out, they run out. They just say, okay, well, we don't have any. Okay, so what happened is with the U.S. Mint, if we look at recent sales, so somebody at the Mint, some genius determined based on prior buying how many silver blanks they would need. Okay, so let's look at the last few years here. Nope, that's January. We want to look at that. We'll look at that in a second. We want to look at first this. Now, as you can see, American Silver Eagle sales have been down the last 3 years. They've gone down from a peak of 47 million in 2015 down to 37 million in 2016, down to 18 million in 2017, and down to 15 million in 2018. Now, it's a little deceptive there because the last 6 months of 2018 were actually much better than the last 6 months of 2017. But if you're just looking at this in a semi-mindless way, is okay, so 17 is bigger than 2018, and therefore 2019 will probably need even less, not recognizing that the trend for 2019 was actually looking better than 2017, just because 2018's second half of the year was pretty strong. So they probably just didn't order enough blanks, and okay, it's no big deal, I guess. They don't care. But if you look in January this year, here's what happened to them. I guess they figured, oh, they're right. 2018, they sold, hold on, let me get the, in 2018, they sold just 4 million. Let me pull up the 2019 numbers here. So in January of 2019, that was this year, the U.S. Mint sold 4.017, okay? And in 2018, the chart is incorrect. In 2018, they sold 3.235. Yeah, I messed up. If you look at the chart here, the 2018 number is actually 2019's, but 2018, that number should be 3.2. So actually there was an increase in January in 2019 over 2018, and I guess they weren't expecting that. And then what happened in February, they sold 2 million, and then they didn't have enough, and I guess they weren't counting on that. All right, so now the U.S. Mint is hosed because they don't have enough silver blanks, and the companies that they rely on if the Mint didn't put the order in for them, obviously they don't. That makes sense for the private companies not to sit around and stockpile blanks because they have to pay for them. If they're not going to sell them, they don't want to hold all that inventory. But the U.S. Mint easily can afford to hold on to some inventory. And apparently the biggest planchet provider, blank mint provider, is the Sunshine Minting Company. This has been a problem for a while. I was looking at some stories earlier. In 2011, some members of Congress were really annoyed that the U.S. Mint not only was doing this, i.e. outsourcing the planchets production, but they were also doing it to with foreign companies or Australian companies that were sending them blanks. And I guess they've tightened it up a bit, but apparently the Sunshine Minting Company is their largest supplier. And the Sunshine Minting Company also has to deal with other mints. It also sells its own private labeled Sunshine Minting rounds. So I mean, they don't have an unlimited capacity to produce blanks for the U.S. Mint. There's other ones, and I don't know what the others 3 of them, but apparently Sunshine Minting is the biggest. There's 2 others. I don't know who they are, whether they're Silvertown or Jet, but we do know that Elemental and Republic Metals, they're 2 very large private minting companies. They're out of business. So if they were also providing blanks, well, they're not providing now. And then you have, I think, Golden State Mint, but I don't know. I don't know who the other 2 are. But the point being is, now that we have 2 large private mints that either were or weren't delivering blanks, they're not even able to deliver just privately minted rounds, which means there's not that many companies right now that are able not only to provide the U.S. Mint with blanks, but just to provide general silver products. So this is best looked at, and I use the example of hamburger patties. You could be at a picnic, and the picnic organizers may have purchased hundreds of pounds of beef, which they intend to make into patties and to sell as hamburgers as the day goes on. But if they have a bottleneck in which they get a rush in the morning of hamburgers, because people are eating hamburgers for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, according to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and we don't need to do that, she said. But people at this picnic are buying hamburgers in the morning, and they don't yet have enough hamburgers made into patties, so there's not going to be hamburgers for a couple of hours. That doesn't mean there's a beef shortage. That means there is a hamburger patty shortage. And that's what we have here. We do not have a silver shortage. No matter what Pumper Channel is going to tell you, there's a silver shortage. In fact, back in 2015, when they were selling a lot of silver, the Sunshine Minting actually came out and said, it's not a shortage of silver, it's our inability to make the blanks necessary for the U.S. Mint. What's most disturbing about this shortage, though, is if you go back to the chart, you can understand why in 2015 they might have gotten caught off guard. But not really, because the year before they sold 44 million. But what's frustrating about now is they only sold 4 million in January, 2 million in February, and that's it, and then they're out. Now, the other thing I tried to do to even give some credibility to this story, that, well, maybe there is a silver shortage, and why did I say that? I said, well, let's take a look at the America the Beautiful coins. Let's take a look at the America Beautiful coins, and oh, look, they're on a delay now. Normally by this time, the first America the Beautiful coin is delivered by the end of February. This year they had started at March 8th, and they've pushed that date out now to March 22nd. Aha! So it's got nothing to do with the planchets. It's because there actually is a silver shortage. No, wrong goes star. It's got nothing to do with that. Guess who also makes the 5-ounce planchets for the U.S. Mint? Sunshine Minting Company. So if Sunshine Minting Company is going to have to spend a lot of time with the dies trying to get the U.S. Mint and other mints more planchets for the 1 ounce, well, they're also going to be constrained because they're also going to have to make the 5-ounce blanks. So the U.S. Mint does not produce 1 ounce or 5-ounce blanks. They rely on third-party providers, mostly primarily the Sunshine Minting, and they didn't put in big orders. So now there's a delay. Well, that's where we stand right now. There is no silver shortage. And the videos that you'll see there, they get tens of thousands of views telling you silver shortage, you got to go out and buy. Now the problem with that is it does boost the premiums. Don't pay it. There's no reason to pay a premium on American Silver Eagle. American Silver Eagles are in short supply. Why? Because they don't have enough of them. But silver's not in short supply, so if you need to buy silver during this period, there's no point in paying the premium on the American Silver Eagles, because in a few weeks, They'll get back up to speed. They'll start producing American Silver Eagles, and you can have all the Silver Eagles you want. In fact, you can still buy them, but what's happening is the bullion dealers are going to charge you more for them because they know they're on allocation. So, anyway, you do what you want, but I think what happened, if you go back to 2015, there were people paying 50% premium on American Silver Eagles, thinking maybe there was a shortage. No, there wasn't a silver shortage. There was a shortage of silver products. And we're going to see that maybe. If demand goes up, we're going to see a shortage perhaps in a lot of these products because there are not a number of mints like Ella Metal and Republic Metals are not around anymore to make enough silver product. Now, this bottleneck will get fixed out as the existing mints may build out their capacities. Ashanti, I think, bought the Japanese company bought one of the, I think, Republic Metals capacity. They may move in and add more capacity to making rounds and bars. So this is a temporary bottleneck. It is not, as far as I understand, a silver shortage. All right, let's see what the Smaulgld mug stackers and game changers have to say. And go over to the comments. All right, what do we got here? Hey, Scotty O's got a good point there, yes. They're going to make their regular 90% coins 999. But let's see what we got from the beginning. Pablo, Presenti are all here. DW, Scotty O made a comment and he retracted it. Yep, palladium miners threaten to strike next week in South Africa. Yep, all the palladium platinum comes from basically South Africa and Russia, so that could create a problem. Taylor Collins, Lewis, saw your post about the housing market on LinkedIn today on my lunch break. Isn't that nice? All right. Meanwhile, platinum down. No, platinum, Taylor, is not down 800. As I was mentioning, platinum today went up about $10, $15. Platinum is 853 right now. South Africa gold mines go out. Would that affect the price? No. SDW. The reason South African mines going on strike wouldn't really affect the price is South African mining production is way, way down over the past 10, 20 years. They've essentially depleted most of their mines. The mining costs per ounce in South Africa, in many instances, is $2,700 an ounce. They're the least efficient mines in the world. So, used to be a huge deal. If that happened in the 60s or 70s, yes, there would be a big gold shortage, but that's not the case today. Tossing Molotovs. Pump that silver up. I'll sell mine to sell it to buy gold or Bitcoin. Gold is a game changer. Golden mugs. There you go. Gold mugs. Pablo Lewis. Lightning Network uses what coins? Works with a lot of altcoins or just Litecoin? No, you have to. It's set up for Bitcoin and Litecoin at the moment. Chuck and Plata. Lewis, a multitude of gratitude for your efforts or labors with Salivate Metal. It's good to have Salivate Metal on, and we'll have on James Henry Anderson next Saturday, this coming Saturday, for Saturday Night Silver with Smaulgld. It'll be Saturday Night Silver with SD Bullion. Got that sibilant S alliteration going on. All right. Chuck and Plata. Okay, what else do we have here? AOC could use a Smaulgld mug. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Don't be stupid. Do you have an opinion of free gold theory? Not at the moment. Chuck and Plata. Mugs made in USA. Nope, those are Chinese mugs. Made in China. Jacques Cousteau. All right, let's see. Chuck and Platt, I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. That's that hamburger guy. All right, Scotty O. The U.S. Mint is now also making all their silver proof sets in 999 silver. You can thank Obama for that. 1985 law took away that the coins had to be made of 90% silver, 10% copper, to at least 90% silver, which can be interpreted as about 999. I don't think these were delayed. No, you know why? Because I think they make those. No, actually they don't. No, I read somewhere that they don't. They don't even make. Nope, they had to get a new planchet provider for those too. But remember, the proof sets, they don't make as many of them, and there's no. There's not a big demand for those. It's not the same as the Eagles, and they're not due to be out yet anyway. So there's probably not going to be a problem with the proof sets. Buy Philharmonics cheaper. Yeah, I mean, if you go for sovereign coins, they basically go U.S. Silver Eagle. And we're going to go through this on Saturday night with James Henry Anderson, the different from SD Bullion, the different bullion products available and what sells the most. The Eagles are clearly the most expensive, and that's because there's a $2 authorized purchaser charge per coin, no matter what the price of silver is. So, if the authorized purchasers pay $2 per coin, then they have to charge a bit of a markup, and then to the bullion deal, and the bullion deal is going to charge you a bit of a markup. So current year issued coins are always going to cost you well over $2 per coin over the spot price of silver. Then you go down to Canadian Maple Leafs, so the second most expensive. Well, actually, Mexican Libertads are expensive because they don't make that many of them, so are Chinese Silver Pandas. But for pure bullion, and then you go to Austrian Silver Philharmonics are cheaper. And a real cheap sovereign coin is the Australian Silver Kangaroo. But the koalas, the kookaburras are more expensive because they're limited edition. And then, of course, the silver rounds are even cheaper. All right. Well, it looks like that's it for tonight. Thank you for all your questions. We're going to be able to get out of here in under an hour. Yeah, so we will see you tomorrow night. We do this each and every night around 7 o'clock, probably tomorrow night at 7. And I want to thank you for joining me tonight, and we will see you tomorrow night. Unless there's any more questions, I'll give you 10 more seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yes, Sunshine does make a nice silver round, says Chuck and Platt. And they have that in a counterfeit feature on them as well. They sell you a little thing. You can hold the thing over it, and they'll tell you it's a real silver round. Class is over, says Jorge Dirte. All right. Well, thank you very much, and we'll see you tomorrow night.